This is Housebound. I'm Chris.
I'm Holly.
I'm Ashlynn.
I'm Greg.
And you're invited. Welcome to Housebound, a podcast we made because we needed company. In it, we talk about things that are on our minds, and today we're kicking off the new year with a discussion on resolutions and whether they are worth making or not.
Are they?
That's to be determined. But probably not by us. I think I should encourage all of our listeners to make their own choices.
And also to tell us what those choices are.
Email at us at... No.
Yeah.
If you want to be held accountable to your resolutions, New Year's or otherwise, then for sure do. But there's no obligation. So I think that we are all quite familiar with the concept of New Year's resolutions. I did a little bit of digging because I was kind of curious as to where the concept started. And people have taken it all the way back to the Egyptians, because of course you always go all the way back to the Egyptians, and
What?
they go,
they started everything.
And it's like, oh, the Egyptians built a pyramid, so that was a resolution, right? And it's like, okay, well, skip past that. Let's go to find something a little bit more obvious. So I found a few interesting facts about kind of maybe not the historical aspect of it, but just the concept of resolution making and why it is tied so closely to the beginning of January, end of December. So in some time before Central Era, so about 4,000 years ago, the Babylonians would make promises to repay debts every year, and they would make these promises to their gods, and then the gods would bless them with a bountiful harvest for the following year. And so some people look at that as like the very, very earliest conception of New Year's resolutions, aside from the Egyptians, of course. And then we have the Middle Ages, where when the Julian calendar started to fall out of favor with the common people, it confused the different societies a little bit, and so people kind of began celebrating kind of whenever during the year. And so I don't know enough to think, like, that was after the Chinese influence of when they would celebrate Chinese New Year and stuff like that. So I can't say that that's a reason that they celebrate later on in the year. I think that this just had to do with I don't know if I'll say this right, but like the Anglo-Saxonized area of the world. Is that accurate? Maybe that's not accurate. Don't fact check me. We've never promised that this.
I'm not even sure if Anglo-Saxonized is a word.
Yeah.
I don't know which area that is.
We're gonna make it be a word. This is a podcast of making stuff
think it's
up.
okay.
Yeah.
But earlier, when the Romans kind of created this calendar system in the first place, the one that they used, they would make promises to one of their gods, which, and I'm going to pronounce it as Janus, because to pronounce it any other way sounds really bad. And Janus is the god of beginnings, gates, transitions, time, duality, doorways, passages, frames, and endings, naturally. And so when they're giving these promises, it's the beginning of this new year / the end of the old year. And so the common thought is that Janus is where we get January from. So that's kind of like a really quick rundown on a little bit of the history of making resolutions specifically around the new year. But obviously we don't hold to that. We just kind of make resolutions because of whatever. And so the question is, should we even bother? Are they worth making or not? Do we even keep them? What do the studies say? And so then we turn to studies and they give us crazy numbers, and then we go, it's not worth making, but then we still do it anyway. So
Yeah.
I've always felt like people wait until the beginning of something to make a decision or to put a decision into practice. Like, oh, I'm going to start this diet at the beginning of next week because it makes sense, because then you can track it or whatever. And that's how I've always viewed resolutions. I'm going to say revolutions like 8 times during this. I guarantee it. And it's not going to make sense.
La resolution.
Yeah. Or like revolutions turning. That's what I was thinking of. Anyways, yeah, that's how I view resolutions, because that's what I do when I make choices about things is just like, oh, it's a new year. That's easy to track then.
Right.
But also easier to know that you failed because you didn't make it to the next year.
Yeah. And so then you
So
just don't want to disappoint yourself in general, so you just don't do it at all, right?
Yeah.
Save yourself from the guilt.
Yeah. Well, I have I did a little digging in terms of like statistics, not necessarily into the history part, but into the more studies and stats part. And there is an article that I found from the New York Post that kind of referenced a few different studies. And so I have some questions for you guys. We'll play a little game and see how close you get to the actual answers that they discovered in this study.
Ooh, I like games.
I love answering questions.
Cool. All right, here we go. Well, here's multiple questions, so this will be good. How long do you estimate people keep their resolutions for? And
1 month.
well, here, which date do most people fail their resolutions? What is the date?
I'm going to say February 14th.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to say January 30th.
Okay, Holly.
Okay, originally I said 1 month,
Yep.
but I actually think it's going to be January 4th.
January 4th. Okay, cool.
Yeah, 3 days in, it gets too hard, done.
Okay, so drum roll. Da-da-da-dum. Holly is the closest.
Oh, no.
That's too bad.
It's January 12th.
People
is the
suck
day.
so much.
January 12th.
Just throw
So,
everyone under the bus.
Not quite 2 weeks in. So if you can get past January 12th, you've gotten past the dark day of January 12th in your resolution, and now you have the light, and you can keep pushing on. So I guess that is something to say about don't lose hope, because if you get past January 12th, you're doing better than a lot of people. So
The majority, yeah.
which is not that bad. So just like push yourself to do 2 weeks, and you're better. So
You're
yeah.
better than everyone else. That's how that's how we tell.
So if you're listening to this podcast, then you have officially made it past the hump if you're still committed to whatever resolutions you decided on at the beginning of the year.
There
So
you go.
congratulations.
Exactly.
Round of applause.
Well done. Well
Yeah.
done.
Well done. We won't talk about those who did not make it. Yeah. So that particular study came from a social network for athletes, and they surveyed like 31.5 million different people across the globe.
Wow.
In regards to that. So, but another study came from the University of Scranton. So this one, the question is, so what percentage of people are able to keep their goals?
Ooh.
What do you think? Which percentage by the end of the year who made goals have been able to keep them?
By the end of the year, 13.
By the end of the year.
13%.
Okay, 13.
I have some stats in front of me that I found, so
Ooh.
I'm going to refrain from answering just in case I
That's fair.
skew the
And
results.
then we can compare.
Sure.
Yeah, this is good. Yeah, cool.
I'm going to say 6%.
Ooh, you have less
6%.
hope in humanity than I do.
Okay, Mrs. January 4th.
So
Yeah.
true.
I'm trying to reset to a more
Your
realistic
expectations.
Yeah,
understanding.
I think
yeah.
you, like Chris just pointed out, you both have just reversed your roles. Because, yeah, Holly, you were pretty dark the first one. So,
I mean, 13% is pretty low.
yeah, it is. But Ashlynn is the winner of this question.
Whoa.
It's 8%.
Am I the winner or are we all losers?
We are all losers. All 80%. Or 92, I guess, of the remainder.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I feel as though this particular study, I don't know where. Yeah, so it was about 8% of people achieve fully their New Year's goals. Chris, what did you find in regards to that?
Well, I had only found a couple of studies, one from 2009, one from 2014.
Yeah.
And the 2009 one was published in the Wall Street Journal. It said that out of a study group of 3,000 people, 88% of them failed their resolutions. like at some point throughout the year. It didn't say 88 by a certain point. It just was like by the end of the year, 88% failed. And so that's around 12%.
Yeah.
And then the 2014 study, which was titled Bunch of Failures or Just Optimism, which I think is very appropriately titled. That showed that 35% of people, when surveyed throughout the year, admitted that they had unrealistic goals to begin with. And so I think that that's a good question because, is our resolution something that we actually aspire to succeed in, and that's why we make them? Or do we just commit to them so that we can fit in with what we think everybody else is doing? And as a result, everybody else is just doing the same thing of us. So it's this feedback loop of like, oh, well, I'm doing a New Year's resolution. Are you? And then you're like, well, of course I am. Are you? And then people are like, well, of course I am. Are you? And then it just keeps going like that. And so
then January 13th, they're like, nah, I'm not really. No. And the other one's like, nah, neither am I.
Yeah. Or you have the people that are just either too stubborn or, like I said, they're just, they just want to seem maybe better than the others. And they're like, well, if they failed, then I can't fail. Otherwise, that says the same thing about me. And so, I think there's a lot of very interesting self-reflection in the concept of New Year's resolution. Because unless I'm mistaken, we're not making promises to any particular gods for a bountiful harvest. But I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that.
So I have one final stats question. What percentage of New Year's resolutions are health related?
Ooh.
So
that's a good question.
Yeah, pretty much the only resolution that I ever hear anybody making is that they're going to exercise more. So I'm going to say something really high, like 94% are fitness related or health related.
I'm going to say 88%.
I'm going to say 75%.
Okay.
Because if I look back on previous resolutions or things I've tried to do in the new year, that's about how many percentage of them are health related.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
Ashlynn is the closest.
Ooh.
It's actually, according to this study, it's 55. So there's another 45%.
Really?
So about a little over half are health related. But then it looks like there's still half are not health related. So it could be like reading
I'm
more.
surprised.
Or it could be, so ones that aren't necessarily fitness. But I mean, a lot that I hear of are definitely fitness. So yeah, so that's great. Good guesses, everyone. I think Ashlynn came out on top with 2 points. So 2 of those were correct. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Which means, Ashlynn, do you know then the answer as to whether or not resolutions are worth making? You're empowered to make this decision for all of us, so make it wisely.
I have an opinion, but that's about it.
Well, we'll settle for that.
Yeah, now she's the expert.
Nice. I do have another question here. When it comes to people who do choose to make a resolution, what are some of the aspects of a resolution that you feel would make it successful? So what are some characteristics of what you believe would be a successful resolution? One of the 8% that makes it to the end of the year.
So what makes it an attainable resolution?
I think, Holly, you kind of talked a little bit about something at the beginning of this episode. You were talking about people always think that they have to start a resolution on January 1st, right? I don't know if you were trying to point out something beyond that. Were you?
No, just that's when things always, you start a decision or an action on the beginning of something, of the beginning of next week or the beginning of the year, or the beginning of this decade or whatever, in order to be able to track it. But I do think that to have a successful resolution, it has to be attainable. So if you've never worked out in your life and you suddenly want to run 5 miles in 3 minutes, you're not going to do that because that's impossible. I think it's impossible anyway. Maybe there's somebody out there that can run that fast, but I certainly can't.
Or if your wife has been making delicious baked goods with your new stand mixer, and you make the resolution of, I'm going to be doing Ring Fit Adventure every day of the week, that's probably unattainable at this point.
Well, what might actually be unattainable for you is to see any difference in weight or tone, because you are just canceling out your resolution with
Truth hurts.
the other circumstances in your life.
I can just feel like I'm sitting on the floor right now, and I can just feel the extra rolls in my stomach just from all of the delicious goods that I've had.
Yeah, Christmas has
this
not
last
treated
bit.
me very well either. Well, it's treated me too well, perhaps, because of all
I
of the
love
treats.
baking. I'm having a wonderful time.
It's so good, though. But anyways.
At what cost, Ashlynn?
Yeah, but are you eating it all?
No, Greg's eating it. It's
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah, exactly.
Needs to be a shared effort.
The other thing that I think is important for keeping a resolution or a goal is to have metrics for it.
Mm.
So you make the goal, and then you have to have a way to gauge how close you are or not to that goal. So if your goal is time related, I'm going to work out every day this year, then that's a really easy metric. You know that you failed on a day that you didn't work out or something like that. But if you make a goal, I want to read more this year, it's really generalized. So what is your metric for that? Like last year, how much did you read? If you read 5 books, reading more might mean 10 books this year or something like that. But if you make a resolution and you don't have a metric, you're not actually going to know if you got your resolution, if you did it, if you succeeded in it. I don't know how to word that.
Yeah. Like, for example, the website Goodreads, you can like track which books you're reading and then make goals. And I definitely failed at my goal last year. I think I had a goal of 20 books. I thought I was going to reach it. Did not. I got like, I think 11 books done last year. So, but yeah. So that was a failure. I was one of the, 92%. So
I think I shy away from making particular New Year's resolutions just for that reason, because I know that unless it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about, it's probably going to fall by the wayside, and then I will feel some kind of pressure from not having attained that goal or living up to that commitment.
Guilt or shame or social anxiety.
Yeah, like if you don't say it out loud and you just have it in your head, then there's nobody to keep you accountable, but then there's no pressure from anybody.
But then there's no accountability.
So yeah, it's a lose-lose or a win-win, I guess. I don't know, win-lose. Depends on who you are.
Yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
Depends whether you're okay with failing or not. Really.
Yeah.
I think also a like effective goal making strategy is a goal where you almost expect yourself to like fall off the bandwagon at some point, but there's space for you to hop back on. You know, those resolutions that are like, I'm going to do, work out X number of times per week, that you make space for yourself. That's like, but when I'm going on vacation or, going camping with my family or whatever it is that you have going on in your life, have a work trip, that you make space that like, I'm not going to do it this week, but that doesn't mean I've canceled my resolution. I'm still going to be able to do it next week and we'll just consider it fine or whatever. Yeah. I think there needs to be some amount of flexibility.
Yeah. I wrote down like leave room for breaks or like don't feel guilty for failing. Just being able to like start fresh the next day or whatever. And I think that's flexible is a good word, just to be able to not be so rigid, I think, in your goal setting that you're like, I have to do this every day, this amount of times. Otherwise, if I don't, I'm a failure. So.
I think there's a fine line between that, though, as well, because I know for myself, I've set goals and then been like, oh, it's okay, I didn't do it today, and felt no guilt whatsoever. Yeah. And then the next day, I don't do it either and felt no guilt whatsoever. So it's like, at some point, you need the enough rigidity to make yourself continue on with it.
Yeah.
Because like having the passion to do something that you know that you haven't done in the past, like you clearly don't have passion about it in the first place.
Yeah.
So you somehow have to make yourself do it anyway.
Yeah.
Now, an interesting thought is that, and I pulling from my own life here, when I make a decision to achieve something and it's outside of the constraints of a particular, quote, New Year's resolution, unquote, or maybe there's another significant event during the year. I guess Lent is another one that comes into mind, is when people do a pause on
Stuff.
on something in their lives for the Easter season. It's not quite the same, but it feels kind of the same. So aside from those events during the year, and I'm sure there's other events in other cultures as well, celebrations that revolve around that a little bit. But aside from those events, when I commit to something outside of that, that seems more of a personal decision that I've made, and I think I feel a little bit more empowered and willing to succeed at that, simply because it's outside of the expectation of something like a New Year's resolution. And so I feel that there's maybe less pressure. I haven't really analyzed it. I was just thinking of it as we were talking here. And one of those things is coming back and doing another year of podcasts like we've talked about doing. Let's do so and so many episodes, and let's see what we can do within, we're all kind of back to work now and back to school. And so we've had our year of chaos and free time and no free time. And now we're kind of getting a little bit back into normal. And
it's
and
not
so
normal yet.
It's not completely normal. No, but we're settling back in.
It's been the same for me throughout.
Yeah, but we're settling back in a sense, some of us anyways. And so that return to normalcy is something that when I make a decision to, let's get together and continue to record, or let's, do some projects around the house that need doing. If I did that at the beginning of the year and went, I require to make these projects happen before the end of the year as part of this New Year's goal, I bet you, everybody's different. I can't say that I wouldn't do them, but I bet you that I would just feel more empowered to do that, because it's free from those constraints of society holding me accountable for my decisions that I made just before I ate a crap ton of food at Christmas time and felt really bad about it. Are you a fellow creative and you're asking yourself, where did they get that absolutely banging intro music for their podcast because you want some for your own project? Well, we found it on Soundstripe, a royalty-free music licensing site with thousands of songs and updates to that library nearly each week. Even better than their high-quality content is their sound effects and stock video libraries that they've just added. And better still, you can get 10% off your first subscription when you use our coupon code Housebound10. That's Housebound10. That's it. Check out all that Soundstripe has to offer today by heading to soundstripe.com or clicking the link in the description. Happy creating!
Yeah.
I think you and I, Christopher, also balk at the idea of doing something just because everybody else is doing it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, I've never made a proper and called it a resolution kind of goal. I've made goals for myself and failed or not at them, but I'm just like, no, everybody else is doing it. I'm not going to do it. 'Cause for no reason whatsoever. I just don't like it because everybody else is doing it.
You can't fail at a New Year's resolution if you never make a New Year's resolution.
Yeah, exactly.
Something along that vein that I find is helpful is having already started your resolution before the new year.
Ooh,
I think is super helpful, because at that point you're already at least starting to somewhat get into a habit. I think it's very unfortunate that a lot of people, at least 55% of resolutions are health related, and that we have Christmas before. So you just it's all the treats, right? It's all the wonderful baked goods and sugar and massive Christmas dinners and all of this stuff that you just and if you have multiple families, if you go to multiple different Christmases, that's just that's a recipe for disaster, pun intended, right? Where
quite literally. Yeah.
And so I think you're setting yourself up for actually it being really tricky to be able to, at least start the new year feeling good, because you're like, oh, this is like so brutal. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that prepping in advance is probably the strategy for success. For the longest of time in high school and university, my New Year's resolution, if I had any, it was super vague. It was mostly just to become more flexible, because I tend to get, like, I can't stand sports injuries. They're so frustrating. Not that I'm that terribly physically accurate,
Athletic?
What's
Active?
the word? Physically active. Not that I'm that terribly physically active, but it's really annoying if you injure something or get hurt, and flexibility can help to keep that at bay. But
See, I thought that you were going
to
to say flexible in the sense of if you got injured and couldn't play, you'd find something to fill the time slot.
Oh,
and
no, like
and I was
actually
like,
just stretch.
So flexible in your goals, so that if you fail
Literally.
your goals for the year, then you're flexible and you're like, it's not a big deal. I
No,
failed
like
my goal.
flexible in my hamstring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I never set like a schedule or a stretching routine or specific stretches that I want to work on or anything like that. And so then I never do it, because and there's no metric for what becoming more flexible looks like, because I didn't measure anything beforehand. So
It's like a personal best. It's like I walked 3 feet yesterday and I walked 4 feet today. I deserve pizza. You know.
I deserve pizza. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was gonna say what Greg was saying about like all of the food at Christmas. It's also all of the time at Christmas. Every resolution is going to cost you time. Like you're going to have to sacrifice something in order to fit this new thing into your life, into your routine. And so finding the time, especially around Christmas time and around the holidays, is almost impossible. Like I have a weight goal that I want to stay at. That's like throughout my life, right? And so at Christmas time, instead of having a weight goal where I lose, my goal changes to staying the same. I hope to stay the same throughout, to be smart about how much I'm grazing or whatever. But I switched back to food because that's always the thing that I'm thinking about. Because freaking pizza. Who just said pizza? I want to eat that now. Thanks, Christopher. But yeah, the time is going to be a big deal, because you don't want to say no to your family or to your friends or to that random person that's back in town just because you want to see them. So then you're not going to read instead of seeing them, or instead of seeing your family or someone else's dog or something, you know, because you want to do those things.
Yeah.
But
I feel another part of what can make a goal successful is actually like you've done it before. Like sometimes I feel like people are always like either trying a new thing or they're wanting to add to what they did last year or something like that, because they're like, oh, I succeeded in this, well now I'll do double it or whatever. And like what I found is that like if you can, like for example, something that I've been doing for like the last 4 or 5 years is trying to read through the entire Bible, right, in 1 year. And so and with that I've been able to successfully get through the year, and then I just start again. And it's not like I'm going to be like, I'm going to try to read through double the amount, you know, but rather I'm just going to do it again. And it starts to become more of just like a rhythm and a part of just my day and my identity, rather than I have to consciously be thinking about, oh crap, I need to do this, or oh no, like I forgot yesterday's or whatever, because I'm just already naturally being, you know, doing it. I'm setting aside the time. It's just becoming a part of my daily rhythm for the entire, and it's not like it's a huge goal that is monstrous or anything, or at least it doesn't feel monstrous anymore, because I've done it for the last few years. I know I can do it. So I think that's another thing that can be helpful, is that taking either a small change or doing something that you've already know that you could be successful at, and then just committing to that. So
and just having your resolution be, I'm going to cement this good habit, rather than I'm going to learn this big new thing. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So the question of resolutions, are they worth making or not at all? I think that despite Greg's stats that we are all complete and utter failures, or at least most of us, I still think resolutions are worth making, or at least goals of some point. And I think we can, like, regardless of whether or not you keep them, I think the new year is a good opportunity just to kind of think about what habits you're forming right now, and what is a part of your life right now, and what you would like your habits to be, what you would like to be a part of your life, and just harnessing the fact that it's a new year and it feels like a new start, even if it's just another day, and saying like, no, like I want to intentionally incorporate these things into my life, whether that's a different diet and health related things or a reading plan or whatever it is. But I bet you that the YouVersion Bible app, the number of people that use the Bible plans probably skyrockets in January from all of the people.
And then January 13th.
Yeah, it drops off.
They just peter off.
But I don't see that necessarily as a bad thing, that more people are choosing to engage with scripture all of a sudden, because it feels like the start of something new, even if it is just another day. So I think resolutions, yes, they are worth making. Even if the new year doesn't matter, your goals still do.
Yeah.
I agree. The self-reflection that it takes in order to make a resolution in the first place. You could just do the self-reflection and not make any changes, and that would be fine. But normally people don't do that unless they want to make changes. So I think I agree that the self-reflection is worth the time.
Yeah, I think that they're worth making, and I also do feel that, like, if you can find somebody to do it with, like a buddy or something, I think that can be helpful, to be able to actually work towards something together. But yeah, at the same time though, when we talked about failure, you don't want to feel guilty and bad about it, and then, like, you know, you were working on something together. So it's a bit of a toss up. But just to add, that particular study that talked about the specific day, January 12th, being the dark day of the year where everyone drops off their resolutions, they did point out something that was interesting. They did find that when people were working with others, this is in particular with like gym stuff, so by joining a club or gym, it did increase people's activity like 46%. So it was a good motivator to get them out there and doing stuff. So I do feel that people are helpful. But yeah, you don't want to let people down either. But that it can sometimes just be a motivator in itself to like keep going. So what about you, Chris? What do you think in terms of are they worth making?
I just want to qualify my answer by doubling back on something that Ashlynn and Holly just previously said, which is perfect. And that was about making space in your routine for your new goal or your new lifestyle, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish for the resolutions. When I was growing up, we didn't have video game systems at our house. That wasn't a thing that we had. We always would go over to friends' houses to play those. And so I never had an allotment of time in my day or my evening after school as an elementary or even high school student where I would come home and hunker down in front of the TV or the video games. Technology was pretty monitored at our household just to ensure that we were getting the most of our growing years outside and feeding our minds with
of your lives
and feeding our minds with imagination and stuff rather than just like droned out in front of a TV. But that's maybe a discussion for another time on whether or not that's actually harmful for you. But the point that I noticed at which I had not structured any time into my life for this video game stuff was when a friend of mine in grade 11 or 12 gave me a really old system and I started to play it. And I played it off and on, but I didn't start playing it every day after school or every day after work for weeks and months on end. I kind of phased in and out of it. And And I think that part of not having us in front of the TV all the time and getting us to read and go outside was my parents working at building, like what Ashlynn said, was these good habits. And so rather than thinking about resolutions as these like monumental goals and tasks, I think it might help us. I think they are worth making so long as we perceive them as what is a habit that I want to create for my life that is something that is beneficial. And so if we think of them in terms of habits, like good habits, do I want to have good manners? Yes. Okay, so then I work at having good manners. Do I want to be courteous to others? Yes, so then I work at being courteous. Do I want to keep my house clean? Well, you can clean your house once a weekend, and that can be a New Year's resolution, but maybe it's just a good habit to keep your space neat and tidy. And so I think if we think of it in that sense, then that becomes something like what you were saying, Greg, where year after year after year, as we grow or expand on that, then we have the knowledge that we're capable of it. And it's not so daunting of a task. And it's not so monstrous of an undertaking. We can just move forward with the confidence that I've succeeded before. I can succeed in adding this one aspect. And then it's not so much of a big challenge to work that time into our lives. And sure, we can try to do something new and crazy, like I want to travel to every country in the world, and set a goal of like 5 years or 10 years times worth, and maybe you can succeed at that goal. But if you are working towards a habit, then you have more skin in the game because it's bettering you as a person. And I think that encourages us, because as humans, we're very concerned with how the world perceives us. And so maybe we can use that to our advantage a little bit, use that pride to our advantage and be like, well, if I can be a better person, ... So it's not to encourage people necessarily to go around being selfish about it, but just, do have some pride.
Judgmental of others.
Yeah, for sure. But do have some pride in yourself and find ways and areas that you can grow in.
So yes.
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 So we all think they're worth it.
Yeah.
And L'Oreal does too.
And L'Oreal.
So if they're worth it, and if we all think that they're worth it, did we all actually make a New Year's resolution this year?
Nope. It could be construed as one, I guess. Chris and I started a workout regime
before New Year's.
But it was before New Year's.
Yeah. And that was pretty conscious because we knew we would have time off and we knew it was going to be Christmas.
Yep.
And we knew that we weren't going to be visiting people. So we had way more time than we would have had previous years. So why not get a jump start?
And we weren't traveling. Yeah.
Nice.
All of that. So we thought we could do that. And we mostly started that because the workout app was like 76% off or something like that.
Nice.
So we were like, if we buy it for a year, we better use it for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, not knocking anybody that does decide to start resolutions of health and fitness, particularly in the new year, because those are great times to get deals on some of these subscriptions or memberships. And so by all means, take advantage of that. But if you do have the ability to start, middle of April for no good reason, then like do April to April or do April to January and then pick a new one in January. Like there's nothing saying that you have to go year to year. You can go month to month or every 3 quarters and just spice it up a little. Why go along with the status quo when if that's not who you are, right?
Did you guys make any resolutions?
I am continuing my Bible reading, so
very good.
I'm in Genesis 20-something, but and I'm doing that with my dad, so that's good. It's good to have somebody else to kind of do it with, but apart from that, my Goodreads is set to 20 books again this year, so we'll see if I can reach it. I think if I merge my Bible reading with that, then that could technically be 66 books.
No.
So I will be well above and beyond.
No, that's not the same.
Hey, it's different authors, so.
Yeah, but not 66 different authors.
What about you, Ashlynn?
Despite what I've said, I have not made a New Year's resolution.
And that is just fine.
Other than to continue to be the wonderful, fabulous person you are.
Aww,
gross. Guys,
so
this is a public podcast.
Suck up.
I did start a new Bible reading plan, but I wouldn't quite call it a resolution.
And you've been making stuff with your stand mixer, so I'm sure you've resolved to continue to do so, regardless of your husband's weight.
She will just also resolve to encourage her husband to go outside more.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it.
Chris, did you make any other things other than our workout plan? Sometimes you do things without me telling me.
No, I haven't. Like, there are things that I am just trying to improve on, like, all the time. And so, but there's nothing specific surrounding the December, January months that I have resolved to tackle. So.
Okay, well, we're all pretty boring.
But we encourage you all to make a resolution if you haven't already, because it's never too late to start.
It's not
never too late to start.
Okay.
Quoth Greg.
But it'll be past January 12th, so that's good.
Oh, dear.
It's never too late to start.
Be better than us.
Well, if you resolve to spend the next year listening to us debate topics and have interesting conversations, you can follow along with us on your favorite podcasting app. You can also go to anchor.fm/housebound, where you can find the hub of all of our podcasts, as well as an option to send us an audio message, which we can then listen and interact with you and even include in a future episode. You can email at us at thehouseboundpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
We resolve to give you great content this year. Or at least make it interesting.
Yeah, no promises past January 13th.
Yeah.